No introduction.
Not from Cisco.
Darwin Archer, who's the city manager in Cisco, just smiled because I might be the only son of a bitch who'd take his job. So, I want to give you guys a legislative update that we saw when we went to, that we heard when we went to TML. Wanted to kind of interject something here. Pat Chesser was supposed to fill this spot, fill this void, talk to you about governance, open meetings. Pat, his schedule wouldn't work out. He had some family issues come up, and then the family issues got resolved. He didn't know if he could make it here, and he may try to make it tomorrow, but nonetheless, he's not going to be here today, obviously. So they just finished the legislative session on May 24th, I believe, 2019, where they went sine die, which means it comes to an end. Thankfully, it did come to an end.
Which one?
Huh?
Which one?
The legislature.
Well, no, it's okay, never mind.
With sine die.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah.
Sorry. I drifted off.
Okay. Start all over.
No.
Anybody want to guess how many bills were filed?
2,500.
You can't answer the question, sir. No.
It's actually really low this go around,
No,
wasn't
it
it?
was not.
9,000.
7,541 bills were introduced in both the House and the Senate. Anybody want to guess how many bills were passed?
2.
That was the case.
2 and 3, right?
2,499.
Oh,
Wrong.
no. It's like 500 or something.
1,437.
Wasn't far off.
Nope. Anybody want to know how many bills affect your job as a city council member?
1,400.
No.
Over 2,000.
Over 2,000. Well, passed and signed, though.
Yeah, city-related bills that were introduced was 2,000.
Yes.
There were over 300 bills that affect cities, that go into effect. Some of them are already in effect, which we took action on Tuesday night. Some of them won't take effect until October 1. Some will not even take effect until October 1 of 2020. And so TML kind of gets a bad rap, and they were the whipping boy of the House, and to a lesser extent the Senate, but mostly the House. They became the whipping boy of all things evil. I asked a state senator 2 years ago, this would be more than that now, when I was in Ballinger. This is at the end of the 2017 session. Is the state of Texas declaring war on local governments, or is this just a police action? And his response was, "You haven't seen nothing yet." And that was 2 years ago. So they've been ramping up to come in and take and eventually what that's called preemption. So what preemption is they want a one-size-fits-all for all Texas cities. Because we all know that the Annettas run just like Willow Park, and we all run like Hudson Oaks, and none of us are as dysfunctional as Alito. And I say that to my good friend Skid, who's probably going to be listening to this later. That's what preemption is, and that's being driven from a variety of groups that wants a one-size-fits-all policy for every city. So when you go and you're trying to do deals, and it's the same across the board. But we all function the same way. Not all town of 8,000 people has $14 million in sales tax. We are 5,500 in population. You are roughly the size of Post, Texas. We get twice the sales tax of Post, Texas. So you can't just put us in a box, put us in a demographic and say that's it. But that's where this has been going for about 2 years. TML gets a bad rap because they're trying to sit there and say each city is unique. The tagline of the last session was "Our town, our choice." And again, on the odds that Roanoke operates differently than we do. And so that's where you're going to see a lot of people really come after TML. TML does not employ lobbyists per se, and that's important to remember. They are employed in governmental affairs staff. To be clear, a lobbyist is someone, as anybody who's had any sort of profession. If you've been involved in any professional organization, BNSF, I'm just going to pick on you guys because it's really convenient. You employ lobbyists. You don't know it, but you've employed lobbyists. Lobbyists are the guys, and I was one of them. They take you to the restaurants. They have the PAC money. They have the funds behind it. TML does not have that. You do not write a check to TML strictly for lobbying activities. Their government affairs staff is paid for out of dues from TML conventions and other private sources. Advertising the TML newsletter, if you get that, that pays for the governmental affairs work. But their registered lobbyists, quote unquote, are more of what I'd call governmental affairs guys. They go to the legislature, they read over 2,000 bills this year. And I've done that job before, and it's not very good. They read over 2,000 bills this year. They provide an analysis to you as to how it's going to impact your governance of the city moving forward. They've never told us how to vote one way or another. They've never told us an opinion on one thing, one way or the other. Now, they sit there and said, if this bill passes, it could be harmful to you. And that's their job to look out for us. But they've never come out and said, hey, we need you to kill this bill. So they kind of got a bad rap. I wanted to clear that up because they are the whipping boy. And I'll tell you the backstory on that one. So 2 years ago, they tried to do a revenue cap bill, which actually passed this year. I'll get to that here in a second. 2 years ago, they did a revenue cap bill. And it was in Ways and Means Committee. And the chairman of that committee was Dennis Bonnen. Dennis Bonnen's now the speaker. TML killed Dennis Bonnen's bill. And they killed it by just simply showing the deficiencies of the bill. Not necessarily that the bill was bad, but it was deficient in this manner, in this manner, in this manner. And the other committee members went along with it. Dennis Bonnen couldn't get his own bill out of his own committee, which was a bad, bad look. Fast forward 2 years, Dennis Bonnen's now the Speaker of the House. It's revenge time. And as Doyle and Amy and myself, when we were meeting with the Speaker in February, I believe it was, he actually mentioned TML, that they were too stupid to keep the same team that they had 2 years ago. Even TAC had replaced their lobbyist, as he would say. So the attack on TML, the attack on cities, everybody says you should have seen it coming. We probably should have. So let's just get to the one that everybody's concerned about, and we'll get to some of the other ones later.
I was like, body or the ducks?
We're in a hotel, so
They're angry predator ducks.
You're up bringing your stuff down from your... There's no way to segue from that into South SB2.
SB2.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to try to make this as exciting for you guys as possible. I know it. I love this stuff. I can talk to you about the history, the back history, and who voted, and how they voted, and why they voted. And feel free to ask some of those questions if you want to. The bill itself is not exactly exciting, but it is how they got there is. So the bill itself is 3.5% rollback rate cap on cities. It's revenue. Keep that in mind. It is revenue. So if you brought in $1 million last year, you can only go up 3.5% on that million. But we're exempt from that. There is a thing in the bill called the de minimis relief for cities. And we really don't know what de minimis means. I think someone got paid a lot of money just to kind of stick that in there.
De minimis?
De minimis.
minimum.
DEMINIMUS. And somebody's going to Google it.
No, it's the minimum.
Eric Contreras.
The minimus.
de minimis relief for cities under 30,000, and we can adopt a rate that levies 500,000. We can increase our revenues by more than 500,000.
Can or can't?
We can.
Can.
We can.
Okay.
So we can, if you're under 30,000, you can go up to 500,000 if you wanted to, an additional $500,000. To give you an idea what that does in Willow Park, that's about a 33% increase in the tax rate. For the record, for the people listening at home, I am not going to recommend a 33% increase in the tax rate. I want to be clear about that. I'm just letting you know that that was one of the things you're going to see. They also allow what's called a 3-year banking of your rate. So what they're trying to do is incentivize you to not go up 3.5% every year. So you could go up 1.5 and then 1.5, and then in that third year you could go up 4% or whatever you needed to, 4 or 5%. As you heard from Holly earlier, I don't think a lot of cities are going to be doing that. Again, we're out of SB2, so a lot of this is kind of moot. But I wanted to inform you of this because what's going to happen in the 21 session, if all things stay the same, we'll talk about that later. If all things stay the same, you can fully expect us to be in this boat in 24 months. So, sorry, my talent keeps coming on. Also, there's the interesting thing about SB2, it goes into effect January 1 of 2020. So it doesn't hit this fiscal year at all. It'll be the next fiscal year until it actually hits. What you're going to see, in my estimation, just talking to the cities in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you're about to see a run of tax rate increases in the next 60 to 90 days from most municipalities. And the reason why is they are trying to establish a new baseline of revenue to go off of when it comes in 20. That run of establishing a new baseline is going to cause the legislature to say, you're out of control, we've got to rein you in, everybody's getting 3.5%. So I want that to be clear. Even though we're not in the bill, we're probably going to be in the bill, and I doubt they're going to give you another 2-year window to go and do that again. So as we talk about budgeting, and I don't want to get into that right now, but as we talk about budgeting, be thinking about this. Whatever you establish this year as your baseline, you're probably not going to be able to go up above 3.5% in 20 or 21 or 22. Right now we could go up to 7.9% without a rollback. And actually they changed the terms in the bill. So the effective rate, anybody know what the effective rate is? Staff, don't answer your question.
Didn't you say it was 0.46?
No, do you know what the effective rate means? I'm sorry.
Definition.
Oh, yeah.
What's the effective rate?
Well, it's basically what your rate needs to be on your, to keep everything the same.
Yeah, no new revenue.
No new revenue.
So the effective rate is now called, legally called the no new revenue rate.
I thought it was voter approved.
No
Right.
new revenue rate.
Okay.
The increase or the rollback rate is now called the
Voter approved,
rate.
which is going to be nuts. Yeah.
Also, you're going to see a new statement in the taxing. So you're going to, so I don't know, Phil King was talking about this the other day. I don't know how they're going to pull this off because I can't even go to the DMV and get my license redone, but the state of Texas is on this, so I feel good. Eric Contreras is going to be able to go into the Secretary of State's website, type in his address, and he can tell, it's going to tell you all the taxing entities that you have. Okay, you can do that already. And you can click on Willow Park, and it's going to tell you where you can go for the tax rate hearing, when the tax rate hearing is going to be held, and who are the council members.
And how they vote.
Not yet, because the tax rate theoretically hasn't been held yet. It's also going to tell you what the no new revenue rate is, what the proposed rate is from the city, and what the voter approved rate is. All that information is going to be at your hands, and it's all in the name of transparency. And all those things are great. I have no problem with any of that, except for this. I don't think it's going to work. Now, Willow Park's unique. I think we've kind of established that maybe today. Willow Park's unique in the sense that we're going to probably have 20 to 30 people show up at our tax rate hearing. And we'll probably have 2 or 3 actually come in and speak. But by and large, I don't think people are drilling down to that level. I hope they do. Because everyone in this room knows that the city of Willow Park's taxes are not what's causing property taxes to go up. It's the school districts, and I think if you follow anything, if you pay any attention at all, you know that when property values go up, like ours, state revenues go down. And so it puts more burden on the local taxpayer. I think roughly 60%, if you live in Aledo ISD, roughly 60% of your taxes goes to Aledo ISD. Roughly of that tax liability, I think we are somewhere around 18% as the city of Willow Park. And so I want the Eric Contrerases of the world to realize that they're paying probably $750 in taxes, maybe $1,000 in taxes. But for $1,000 a year, you're getting a quality fire department, you're getting a quality police department, you got a quality city council,
For
you
zero.
got great staff. It's not a bad ROI. Yes, sir.
I heard Holly say this morning that in her speech, they would probably go to a 7.9% rate this year.
Yes, sir.
Who said that?
And that's because of establishing the new base.
New baseline. Yes, sir.
You know what they did last year?
I think she mentioned they probably went to 5-6%, maybe somewhere in that area.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah. I want to throw this out. I'll throw a budget question that's also related to it. If I came to you and I said the city needs $115,000 of ad valorem, of extra ad valorem. Now keep in mind, our take is about 1.4 million. So I said we're going to add 115,000 to 1.4 million. Who here, just with that statement alone, would have a problem? Now, what if I told you that was a 7.9% increase in the tax rate? That's what you're looking at. 7.9% increase in the tax rate. Now, I don't want to say only, but the math points it out. Only produces about 115,000 in extra ad valorem.
Which in 1.4 is not much.
No. Gets you to about 1.5. So that's where we are. That's how SB2 is going to impact you. Because next year, when you can only go up 3.5% on 1.5, it's probably going to generate maybe an extra 70,000. And I can tell you, and I love these guys, the department heads, they're going to be fighting over that $70,000 increase. And that's if you went up to the 3.5%. So when we talk about strategic planning, we talk about budgeting, we talk about vision, keep in mind, this is what SB2 has done to you as a city. This is, and we're not in that yet, but we all have to plan this if we're going to be. I still remember I testified at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I remember Dennis Bonin asking me point blank, he says, well, you're from Ballinger, we population bracketed this thing, you don't have to worry about it. You're not going to be in it, what do you care? And I remember saying, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, there's going to be a day when we are in it, and it's going to hurt us adversely. And of course he says, you're from Ballinger, and my state rep had to correct him and say it's actually Ballinger. At that point, he said it was 2:30 in the morning, let's go home. So that's where SB2 is. That's the big hook. That's the one that's got everybody's attention. They try to, keep in mind, you listened to Phil King the other day at the chamber luncheon. I know you were there and you were there. The state does not put a property tax in place. They constitutionally cannot do that. So when they tell you they lowered property taxes, they didn't actually lower anything that they did. They lowered what you could do. Now I'm going to give you the political answer here. I think all this is going to fail. I think people want meaningful tax relief, and I remember Phil King telling me back in December before the session, people who pay $10,000 in property taxes really don't think $200 is really a whole lot of relief. congratulations, you're paying $9,800 instead of $10,000. And the reason why is the state of Texas just hasn't come to the table to fund education. And that's it. That's how we're tied with education. The county's in the same boat. The county's probably in a worse position than we are. Because they're going to have to do something to go up to establish a new baseline, or they're going to be behind the curve. I talked to a friend of mine who's in Cedar Park. He's on the city council there. First year, Cedar Park, Texas. Y'all know where that's at? First year, they're going to have $1 million deficit, year one. If you project that 10 years out, they're $12 million in the hole. Because the revenues are going to be going down, her needs, his needs, her needs, they're all going to be going up. So you're going to have some sort of conversion or collision of needs and resources in the future.
But don't you really think it'll happen sooner than that?
I do. I really do. I think, politically speaking, you were there when we had breakfast with Phil. I remember Phil King looking at me and Noel and saying, if we don't solve this problem, none of us are going to be back here in 2 years. I don't think they solved the problem. I think they put lipstick on a pig.
Yep. They ran a really good smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. And I say that knowing that they had their best intentions.
Yeah.
And I say that knowing that I don't think they intentionally wanted to harm cities, but we just happened to be a combatant in this thing. They had to do something to somebody, and we were the somebody. I think some members think that we are greedy. I think some members think that you are incompetent as a city council. I think some members think that you shouldn't exist. But I don't think Phil King's one of those guys. I think Phil King kind of got caught in the middle of it. I think he wanted to do something. I want to be clear about that. I think he wanted to solve a problem. I think he recognized they kind of halfway solved it, which scares me because I think they're going to come back and finish the job in 2 years, which means we're going to do this. I will say this, interest in seeking is not susceptible to the 3.5% cap. So as I've had discussions with my colleagues, as we've talked to, in fact, I talked to Bobby Roundtree extensively about this Tuesday. We probably talked for an hour. There's going to have to be a new way of doing these things. School districts used to pay for school buses. They would save up their M&O money. They'd put money away in a lockbox, and they'd go buy a school bus every 3 or 4 years. They're financing school buses now. That city manager tell me we're going to be financing hammers. Because you have to preserve your M&O when you go into your budget because of SB2. You have to preserve that. Your interest in sinking rate, you're going to see a lot of CIP funded that way. And we talked to Holly this afternoon. That's how they fund a lot of their CIP is going to be through debt. I'm not a big fan of that. I know that we've issued a lot of it, but I don't know if that's a sustainable model just yet. But we're going to have that issue come up. Didn't mean to be the bad thing on that. Let's see here. A couple of funny ones. We can't prohibit dogs in outdoor portions of restaurants. So Fido can go eat with you now. You cannot ban lemonade stands because, we were doing that a lot.
Is
That's my
Drake Show
hometown.
patio considered outside?
Yeah.
They don't,
Yeah.
Yeah. They already allow dogs.
Yeah, they allow dogs. I think the brewery does too.
Can we tax lemonade stands?
Yeah.
We can.
You raised that from the tape.
We can tax lemonade stands. I wouldn't advise it. Here's the interesting thing on lemonade stand bill. And Sharon at TML was telling me the story. So I don't know what city it was in.
Overton,
Was it in Overton?
my hometown.
Okay. They're out
I know
there.
what happened.
Well, they don't have code enforcement guy, do they?
I'm not sure.
These
They
kids
do or
were
not.
running a lemonade stand. The city said you need to get a permit.
Oh, they did have code. Somebody.
And
Yeah.
and the kids, like mom and dad, they're selling lemonade. The permit's $50 and they're going to make like $3, right? And so if it would have just ended there, and I think the city probably waived it, but then someone took it as a mantle of, I've got to carry this thing through. Well, what so happens in these popular bills that everybody knows is going to pass is it becomes what's called a Christmas tree bill. And so everybody gets to hang their little issue on a bill that they know is going to pass. So then some of the agricultural people got involved. So now we cannot prohibit people from selling raw milk, which is interesting. You can't prohibit people from selling, fresh eggs or anything like that. Part of that bill that got parsed out and then became another bill is the chicken bill. And that's what they called it, the chicken bill. You can have 6 chickens in your backyard by state statute, and I can't stop it. Not that I would. But you can't have 6 you can have up to 6 chickens. Here's another bill that really drove Mark Pavaro nuts. And I think he'd probably even tell you that. It's the building standards bill. And I forgot what the bill number is, and I've got like 30 pages of it. I'll find it here in a second. But we can no longer regulate building materials on houses.
2459.
Yes. No, that was it.
That was the other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can no longer regulate. So when you build a house, Vera, you know that empty lot
2439.
across from you? Thanks to this bill, I can go out there and put up a tin shanty. That wasn't with L. I can put up a shanty. And as long as the material is covered by code, which is a big, long swath of materials, there's nothing any of you guys can do about it.
You know who lobbied for that the hardest?
The Builders Association.
And the Realtors Association.
Yep.
What was the realtors?
Because they can build houses faster.
The argument was it's more affordable housing. That because we require so much masonry is more expensive than, say, Hardy.
Yeah, that was the Realtors thing, and then the other angle was...
So you can no longer do that. You can't require a certain percentage of materials in your construction. So we're probably going to have to amend some of our codes for that. The other thing it did was it effectively killed our I-20 overlay. Yeah.
So does that impact HOAs that have it in their bylaws that say you have to be?
That's going to be interesting.
But you can, there was an argument that you could try to get builders to work with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not a have to, but
I think the market's going to take care of this problem in and of itself.
I do too.
So let's just take our neighborhood, for example. Jerry Stockton's not going to build with all due respect to my friends from Mueller, he's not building a barn dominium right across the street from Vera's house. It's going to be on the market for a long time. He's going to be out some money. But we cannot restrict that as part of our code. The city cannot stop it. Yes. Yeah.
When is that?
Already did.
No.
Brian, does this apply to both residential and commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think we'll have an issue there.
I don't think we will either. I just think it's interesting. It's part of that whole preemption thing. This section can be best characterized was, hey, if there's any problem on the planet, if you can somehow figure to tag it to a city, it's going to pass. For example, SB 1978, my favorite one, the Save Chick-fil-A bill. I didn't realize Chick-fil-A needed saving. It's one of the most popular fast food chains in the country. And I get the point of it. No adverse, the government can't take adverse reactions or stances against a business because of their religious reasons or affiliations. Or
I thought
anything
that was
else.
already...
Yeah. What happened was San Antonio, at the airport, Chick-fil-A opened it. Chick-fil-A's not open on Sundays. So...
Airport kicked them out?
Yeah, the airport kicked them out and closed them, and Chick-fil-A, kind of said, well, this isn't fair. The governor's office, Dan Patrick, and the speaker never missing an opportunity to bash on Democrats, which San Antonio is a democratically run city. That was all politically driven. If if the city of Fort Worth had kicked Chick-fil-A out, I don't think they'd be going after Betsy Price and Earhart. I don't think this would have been that big of an issue. But it's a campaign thing, and we are now mirroring, if you haven't figured it out yet, you're mirroring campaigning and governing. It used to be you campaigned for about 6 months, you take about 6 months off, and you governed for about 12. Now you campaign for 18 months, right up to the point where you can no longer take money, which is right before the session. You govern for 140 days, you take 30 days off, and then as soon as you start taking money, you're campaigning again. Rough estimate, the number of dollars for policy versus campaigning. For every policy dollar, they spend roughly 4 on campaigning. So they're spending a lot of money on promises and not a lot of money on delivering. And that's an old stat that's been around for a long, long time. This is not new to Texas or anywhere else. At one point, we were all going to be plumbers.
Yeah, that was crazy.
What happened there was the plumbing, and it was an internal squabble between the plumbers and the licensing and regulation. I know the executive director of licensing and basically they wanted to move the plumbers under licensing and regulation. The plumbers wanted its own standalone licensing agency. And I thought one of you guys was texting me. They said, no. Well, it got sunsetted. So right after the session, it's like, hey, we're going to lose our licensing here in about 6 months. And so Governor Abbott got fast and loose with the Constitution. And he said, well, under the Hurricane Harvey relief bill, I have the authority to reestablish the Plumbing Licensing Commission for 2 years. So we can come back and do it. Because we all know that there's a plumber in Dalhart, Texas that just can't wait to go down and work in Houston. If you don't know where Dalhart is, it's 2 hours north of Amarillo. Again, these guys kind of get fast and loose. It's all, and this is what, and I'm just going to say, this is what I love about city government, this is what I love about local government, this is quite frankly what I love about you guys. Rarely does politics ever come into play. The 18 months plus or minus that I've been here, it's always been, is it a good policy, is it good for Willow Park? That's what y'all always come to us with as a council to staff. You've never said, this is some sort of Democratic, thing, or this is a big Republican thing, or this is a big government thing. Y'all never done that. And what you're seeing is, you're seeing Austin politics come into the city government. And that's your takeaway of the session. Is that, and it's really weird, Bennett, the executive director of TML, Bennett Sandlin, has a great story. He says, government's like the Three Bears and Goldilocks. Federal government's too big, right? It's bloated, it's over. Local government's too small. Y'all can't get anything done. And the state government is just right. Which I think is a load of crap. I'm old enough to remember that local control meant the locals made the decisions. That's being taken away from you guys, and it's going to happen again. There's going to be more preemption bills filed. That's why it's important that we have the relationships we do with Phil. That's why it's important that we have whatever relationship we have with Pat Fountain we do. I think Phil King's probably going to come back again as chairman of the redistricting committee, which is important. But I'm also going to tell you this. Don't be surprised if the Texas House flips to a Democratic House in 2021. And I said that right, the Democratic House. Right now there's 83 Republicans in power. You need 76 to take over. So that's what, a 7-seat window there? Democrats have an 8+ gain. It's a Democratic House, and everything I said moot. You will have a stalemate, you will pass a budget, and you will probably do nothing else.
What can we do different for our representatives to, because they didn't vote how we wanted them to vote. What do we do different?
I think in terms of Pat Fallon, I don't know if there's anything we can do differently, just to be candid. I think Pat has a conviction. He has a firm belief, and if you heard his speech to the chamber back in June, he's going to be unwavering from it. How many here was at the June chamber luncheon? That was probably the most anti-city rhetoric I've heard from a public official in a very, very long time. And I know it offended a couple of mayors that were there. I know it offended a couple of staffers that were there, city staffers. And I don't think Pat Fallon really cared. When we walked up and said, Senator, this bill is really, SB 2 is going to be harmful to us. This is before the administrator was explained. You're going to really hurt our law enforcement. And as you guys want to see the budget process, and you know this, and I've told them I was going to do this. Her and him represent 80% of your general government. If you've been in my office at all in the last 2 weeks, you see that whiteboard, not the big one with all the, but that little small whiteboard. All of our general government taxes come out to about $3.1 billion estimated. His budget's about 1.4, hers is about 1.3, and I'm probably a little low on one or two of those. Heads or nodding. Heads or nodding. Just on my low estimate, which now I got to go back and revamp, I have $500,000 left to do parks, streets. I have got Candy convinced that she can go 9 months without a paycheck, but I can't get Alicia there.
You got Candy convinced that Alicia can go now.
That's the math. If staff's heard me say this, that's the math problem that we have. That's our math problem that we got to go solve. But fear not, we'll talk about this tomorrow. You got a great staff. But to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, I think we need to communicate, tell that story to Phil. That the rhetoric that he's hearing, and let's be honest with you, I've heard the name campaign consultant more in the 2019 session than I had in the previous 10 sessions before. The campaign consultants were driving policy this time. That's not how this works. That's not how Governor Bush did this 20 years ago, who I probably the best governor I ever worked with. That's not how he did this. It was, what's the policy guy say? Do I agree with the policy? I'll go sell it. Now it's, what does the campaign guy say? What's your polling numbers tell you? Okay, I'm gonna go that way. Polls lie. They absolutely do. If you hear a politician tell you the polling said this, let me tell you how polls work. They get somebody, good pollster will come out. What do you want to get an issue on? I want to get an issue on, is BNSF a great railroad company? Right? Okay. Well, they find out who your top 10 customers are. They poll your customers, and it turns out 80% of your customers love you. But the inverse could also be true too. They could also poll your worst customers and say you're poor. That's how polling works. Don't believe that. It's always got to be good number. It's always got to be a good policy, and that's what I think we're trying to do here. Does it work best for us? We tell our story, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we told our story this time. It didn't work.
Then you tell it again.
Well, I mean, we will. We'll keep telling it, but I remember Phil saying that they were getting more calls for they really wanted to do 2.5.
Yes.
That's what they wanted to do.
Yes.
And that's what the buttons on some of these Tea Party people were. And they were getting more calls from the 2.5s than they were from us.
Yes.
That's what Phil said.
Because no one picks the phone up and call, and it's, if you polled 100% of people in this room, no one's going to say, I want to pay more in property taxes. And we're all work for the government or associated with it. That's where your polling's flawed, and that's where they couldn't understand it. No one's going to pick up the phone and say, yeah, I want my taxes to go up.
May I make an observation? I mean, just from, I've gotten involved this go around and you know, what I'm seeing. And first time I met Pat Fallon, I saw how anti-local government he was. And so much of this is just ideal driven, just ideals, not what makes sense, not what is an educated, you know, answer. It's just what's driven by emotion. I voiced to Bryan, and I also told Carrie, when we come out with our budget, I really want to feature fire and police and put out there, okay, this is how, just really feature that and show how much fire and police cost and how much it's going to cost us in manpower and what have you if we don't go up on taxes, and we push that out there, because who in the world's going to step up? And I'm not even talking politics, but I think that people are just not educated. I never have heard somebody say, we pay our fire and police too much money. It's the opposite. That's what you see all over social media. That's what I'm told personally. You know, if you pay our people a decent rate, one of the only people we had show up for the budget hearing was coming to speak in favor of the fire department. You know, say, no, we need more fire. So it's that type of education that it's going to take to shift that attitude. That's what we could do within Willow Park. You know, I've figured out that I'm only as good as whatever I can touch. And so that's where I have to focus. But
I'll give you a real, so it's 8%, 7.9 gets you 115,000.
yeah, but what does that translate into with,
And I'm
Yeah.
going to answer that question.
yeah.
That's 2.5 firemen per
Yeah, and that's the type of information. How does it affect me?
But,
Yeah.
no, that's where we're going.
Yeah,
That means
exactly.
Carrie's kind of screwed.
Yeah, I mean, and I just think if we could put it in terms, you know, like if we put out there for a $300,000 home, this is how much of your tax money goes here, how
Yeah.
much, you know, just to try
And I've got exhibits to do that.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the town hall that Holly was talking about. There's one person that shows up to the tax meeting.
But how many show up to talk to Phil? That's the thing. You know, he got more calls on the
Oh, I
2.5
know,
than,
but I
you
mean,
know,
he got
3
more calls from a retirement living center from
out of
people.
state, yeah, out of
I mean,
town.
it's who calls. So I don't know how we do that better.
I think
Well, if you're not angry about something, you don't get involved. You know, upset people will show up. When people are happy about how things are going, they don't pay any attention to it.
Yes.
I know I was that way. You know, I know I've been
The
that way.
frustrating thing is,
That's
though, if we go up
frustrating.
to 7.9, we're still short.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
so I'm sitting here and I'm looking at what is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is it worth, is the backlash worth 8%? I mean, because the law, you know, and this is the most unpopular thing you're going to hear about budgets and how it relates back to SB2. And me and Jake Weber were talking about this. Out of all the lines in the budget, all of them, outside of what they're asking for, their asks, as far as revenues go, of all the lines in that budget, there's only one box that I can tell you with 99.9% accuracy that's going to come through. That's property tax. It's a simple formula. Rate times value, which we're going to get next week or 2 weeks, equals levy. And you take that number, you multiply it by 97.5, because the tax, not 100% of the people pay their taxes. They collect about 98%, and I always take about $500,000 off, or 0.5%. That's the only number I can tell you. Everything else, as they say in economics class, it's a swag. You know what a swag is, right? Okay.
So the only thing, Brian, with the tax thing, right? So if property values stay the same, 7.9% will give you your 100 and what?
About 115. I based that 115,000 off of 565 million.
Right. And which is the latest number when?
Well, so our total assessed value was about 519 and change,
Uh-huh.
519 million last year. They gave us an estimate of
585.
yes, 585. I was going to say almost 590. 585. That's their estimate. I figure there's going to be about a 5% loss somewhere in there. So 565 is kind of what I'm basing our numbers off of
for next year.
for next year, yes.
So, so if you do the 7.9%, you know, it's going to give you 100, what?
About 115,000.
115,000, right? And then you're capped out at 3.5 thereafter,
Yes.
right? But property value's still going up.
Yep.
So you're not limited to that 115. It's going to be,
It always rolls back.
Yes.
It always rolls back.
Your affected, your no new revenue rate will always, but I'll give you, so we're at 30 cents right now on M&O.
right,
When you factor in at 565 million, your no new revenue rate is going to go from 30 cents, about 25 cents, 25, 26 cents, somewhere in there. So you're going to lower your rate 5 cents.
Yeah, as your property tax, as your property value goes up,
right.
your rate goes down.
Goes
They
down.
give us a new rate
Oh, I
every
see what
year,
you're saying.
and we can only raise on that new
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah.
So-
3.5.
No, actually, you can only raise it on the revenue.
Right.
So, because it used to be,
Right.
you can only go up on that rate. Now you can only raise it on the revenue.
It's to offset property tax,
Right.
property
Yes.
value increases.
Yeah.
It's to say, we can tell you your house goes up however much, but your taxes will stay the same.
Yes.
That, in general, what they're trying to tell you.
So, last year's numbers, if this had been in place, how much was our tax increase? You know, we didn't increase the rate, but had this been in place, do you know
Just-
what that?
we didn't increase the rate, but with the value.
Yeah,
I think
the
it
value.
came out to,
4 is what we said.
Yeah.
4?
4-ish.
Okay,
That's what we said
yeah,
last
I
year.
will say just under 5.
okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of where you were last year.
I was just curious.
I know,
Yeah.
but you know, there's a lot. This is the challenge that you have that SB2 should kind of place on you, is because she's growing, he's growing, the community's growing. I don't know what it is for every. I mean, we had a slow year last year, and we added 80 new water accounts. That was a slow year. So that's roughly another, what, 400 people probably? 300 people, if you will. That's how many new officers for you? Half? One? Yeah.
Well,
But-
she grows, I need to grow.
That's exactly it. No, I mean, you.
And the rest of us want to get paid too.
Yeah, that comes into.
Just only 3 months of the year.
Well, and you have a whole bunch of expenses. The courts have a whole bunch of new expenses that go away for
Well,
the protective measures, the security for the
that's
plates
fixing
and
to change.
yeah,
Part of the whole.
where we've got.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't talk
Changing it, yeah.
Yeah, I know that hasn't even come on the table, but I just.
The driver responsibility.
Yeah, but all our fees are changing.
Yep.
The way they set up the court security fund is changing.
Okay.
We get part, city gets part, state gets part. As of right now, city doesn't get any.
Yep.
Just goes to the court. But
By the way, on traffic tickets, we don't get the full run. We get, what, 20% of the.
Less than 20.
It's really not that much of a revenue stream, and I
No.
identified that whenever I was a private resident. I was like,
No,
wow.
It's not. And so that's where this whole thing starts. You got to talk about different revenue streams. We got to
Yeah.
figure out, you know, how are we going to generate the revenue to pay for Carrie and Mike and Alicia. Katie doesn't get paid.
I tell you though,
Not me.
as depressing
You're
as
stuck
it
in the
is, I
corner.
hear some of these big cities, it's a nightmare.
Anybody want to take a gander at what Fort Worth's deficit is the day SB2 hits?
12 million.
No, more than that.
Well, the first thing they did, everybody's like, why did they give up Fort Worth Botanical Garden? I'm like, that was an easy cut for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
They've got to cut 21 million just to meet fire and safety.
Yeah.
21 million.
The trail system that everybody in Fort Worth loves, and I think it's cool because I can put my kayak in right there at Panther Island.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to go away. It'll still be there, but it will
It's
not
not gonna
be.
be
It won't be
maintained.
clean and maintained near as much as it was.
I really think in 2 years, they're going to see the backlash of this, and hopefully in 2 years, they can correct it. I don't think it'll take that long for them to see results, bad results from what it's doing.
I had a city manager in this area, and I'm not going to name names because he told me not to, but he said when he gets a call for a pothole, he's going to forward that call to his state rep.
That's a good idea. There you go. That's
Well,
what we
the
do.
problem
boys.
is they're trying
That's
to
what we
fix
do.
a school system by
Penalizing us.
Yeah, penalizing cities and
Yes.
and everything else.
Yeah.
And they're not even addressing the root cause of
Yeah.
the school system.
And I think they know it.
But
Well,
it
that's
sound-
why it was smoke and
sounds-
mirrors.
It sounds good, though.
Yeah, that's why it was all smoke and mirrors.
Well, one of the big proponents of anti-city, anti-school, anti-everything was a guy named Jonathan Stickland. And if y'all know anything about Texas politics, if you haven't Googled Jonathan Stickland, please do.
He's not running again.
No.
No, you got the
Stickland-
cockroach award.
Stickland quit. He
Oh, that guy,
announced.
Yeah.
Well, that day we were in Austin. He announced he wasn't running again. He's from Bedford. He passed one bill in 8 years. It was the traffic light bill. Well, we can't have red light cameras anymore. But he was an antagonist. He voted against everything. Couldn't get anything done. But he was the poster child for the Tea Party in Power, Texas. He was their standard bearer. He won by less than 100 votes, maybe 150 votes.
At 1 or 2%.
Yeah, in the last election, maybe 1,500. But he, in a statewide, or in the state rep race, he barely won. And he knew they were gunning for him. A guy out of Waxahachie, Ray, he announced last week he's not coming back. You're going to see a lot more people get their polling numbers back. You're going to see a lot of people who were been there forever saying, I don't want any part of what's going to happen in 21.
Well, I think Texans, they're not even worried about party affiliation. They just want solutions. In general. I think that,
I think this state's going to be blue in 3 years.
and
I
that's
think
because
it's
of the
gonna-
far right.
It's going to be purple.
It's going to be purple, yes.
As
5 years.
That's because the Tea Party people are
As
resigning,
Evan
so the
Smith told
Republicans.
us in Austin, Texas didn't become more blue. It's becoming less red.
Yeah.
And that really did hit me until I had some friends over and last week. Right-wing Republican, church every Sunday, and never voted for a Democrat a day in their life. And they're school teachers. And they both looked at me and they said, we're voting Democrat. The social issues didn't matter near as much as the financial issues. When the Republicans start losing that demographic, and that hit me, I had the same reaction when my 80-year-old grandfather said he's voting for Barack Obama in 2008.
Well, the mainstream Republican Party has tolerated it for too long. They were trying to solve it in-house. They just tolerated it for so long, and now they're taking it back. The decision that was over there in Tarrant County with the chair, out of South Lake.
Yep.
They tried to kill it, and then so.
That's all I got. Y'all have any questions? Anything you want to know? Just a couple of housekeeping things. What time is Charlie picking us up?
6:45.
All right, so you got about an hour and a half to get lathered up or whatever you want to do.
No, it's at 6:45, but we may go over a little early and do some shopping if anybody's interested in getting because we can get the trolley over here at any time.
Also, did anyone not get a ticket for breakfast?
I got one. You didn't get one you checked in? I got two of them.
You can't have breakfast.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.